Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. The goal is to be transparent and unbiased. This is not an endorsement. It's a privilege to serve you. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for joining me on this nice, absolutely beautiful lake here. This is Pitt Lake up in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm in Canada checking out the Biktrix Kutty. So this is a pretty cool electric folding bike, and I thought this would be a good place to take it because we're here at the boat launch, obviously, on the deck. You can see we got some fun boats over here that have a little maple leaf on them. I thought that was so picturesque. But yeah, some folks get folding bikes to put in the boat or in an RV or in an airplane in some cases. So, you know, I thought for to showcase the folding aspect, this would be a good place to take it. Okay, so this is the Biktrix Kutty LT. So Kutty is kind of like the name for their folding bikes, and LT for their hub drive. So the basic kind of rundown is that this is a folding fat tire hub drive electric bike. So that's kind of the synopsis of it all. But let's talk about some of the specs, and we'll start with the back of the bike over here. So this is using a Shimano tourney for the derailleur. That's kind of on the low end, sort of basic for the Shimano side, but Shimano does make some good stuff with good service all around the country. So it does require a little more TLC, but it's a good system all around. And you have a 7-speed set of gears back here. You have a pretty wide range too, up to a 31 tooth in the back, which is a really mega range, they call it. So that's kind of a nice feature to put in there. This is a 750 watt motor nominal, which goes up to 1,000 peak. So that's a pretty honking motor to put onto a relatively small bicycle, the folding electric bike platform. So yeah, definitely we'll talk about that in a little bit. Also in the back of the bike you have the feature of the chain that kind of comes into the pretty massive 52 tooth front chain ring up there. And also atop of all the chain you have this rack. So this rack is a bolt-on rack that kind of can adjust. So that's kind of nice if you wanted to, say, take this off and put it on another bike for some reason. But this rack kind of has some wider rails, so it's good for carrying additional weight. So you could put perhaps like a gallon of milk on each side of this, but you won't be able to attach every single pannier rail because it's a slight thickness. So you can sometimes on the hook for the pannier you can kind of bend it out a little bit to accommodate that. But that's kind of the one thing that you'll run into if you have a set of panniers. You probably want to check out, make sure how wide it is to see if it'll fit. Back here you also have the rear fender. So this fender doesn't extend all the way towards the back of the bike, and the purpose of that is to maintain the folding aspect. If you had the fender coming all the way down, then that could compromise some of the folding, the total length of the bike. So that's good to have metal fenders, brownie points for myself. I like metal fenders a lot. So also in the back here you have the 160 millimeter rotors for these mechanical disc brakes. So these mechanical disc brakes are really nice to have. It's common to see folding bikes that have the cantilever brakes. Yeah, they have the cantilever brakes on a lot of folding bikes that I've seen. But the disc brakes are nice. They're really nice. I prefer them for just about any electric bike. Whether they're cable or whether they are hydraulic really depends on the use. Back here you have the fairly large axle nuts that go into the motor. This is a hub motor, so it means that the motor, of course, is in the back of the bike, right in the middle of the hub here. And you have the cable that kind of comes out here and connects into the rest of the electrical system. Also back here you have the adjustable kickstand that's mounted in the rear, which can be kind of nice. In the center of the bike you have the 48 volt 10 amp hour lithium ion battery. That does also lock into position with this set of keys. In this particular bike, the key is also necessary for turning on the bike, like kind of an ignition. So depending on the level that you have it here, you can unlock it in there, or you can turn it to the off position. So the battery is locked in place, but the bicycle is not turned on yet until you turn it on. And now from here you are free to kind of check the battery level on the bicycle battery itself, or you can turn it up on the front display. And we'll kind of get into those features real quick when we get up to the front of the bike. I do have a seat post here that of course telescopes like every seat post. And we'll go ahead and lock it into position there with the quick release. But it also has a tab that can fold the seat out of the way so that the battery can pull out from that position. So this is a nice thought out piece of equipment right here. I have seen it on some of them where you have to pull the whole seat off. It's not hard, of course, because you can just do the quick release here. But this is a nice added touch, so you can keep the seat where you want it, and it's still pretty stable. This is a Cell Royale seat with some good gel in it. I actually like this seat quite a bit. And of course, a quick release that we kind of already mentioned. These are some of the cabling coming up the front of the bike. So these cranks are nothing terribly special, but these pedals are. So aside from the reflectors that are nice and integrated into the profile, the plastic profile of the pedal, these pedals fold in themselves. So when you push that in, you can then rotate the pedal, and now it is a little bit shorter. So you can save yourself a couple inches by having that pedal folded in on either side. And that really makes a big difference. Let me tell you, it might feel like it's only, you know, a slight increase or decrease in total size, but it helps out a lot. So much so that you see them on pretty much every folding bike has a set of nice folding pedals like these. So that's a great feature. This is the locking pin for the frame section of the folding. So when you release the quick release here, that will allow you to pull the pin out of place. And then when you lift the pin up, then that will allow this entire thing to break and fold. And I'll show you a picture of the whole thing folded up that I took a little while ago. And that's what the bike looks like when it's totally folded. And we'll kind of go over a little bit more folding things right now. So moving up the front of the frame, you have some pretty wide tubing right here to accommodate for the lack of a top tube to still keep rigidity while you're riding. So talking about the folding portion still, you have several kind of release levers on the handlebars itself. And these release levers are a little stiff, and the reason for that is because you still want to maintain control on the handlebars while you're riding. So this one here at the very top, when you pull that up, that will allow you to rotate the handlebars on that axis there. So that way you can kind of shorten up a little bit, kind of move the controls out of the way and get the handlebars where you want them. So we'll kind of keep those down. We'll clamp that back into position. This quick release here allows the telescoping aspect to occur. So you can pull it up, I think that's the minimum right there, and then put it all the way down if you want to save a little bit more space. And so those are the two quick releases. This one, I guess it's also a quick release. This one is a pin that you would use not for customization but for total folding. You pull up on that little pin right there, and then the whole thing rotates down after you pull on the big lever. So now the handlebars are down there. I hope nobody rides like that. But then when you put the quick release here on the main part of the frame, this whole part of the frame rotates over, and then bam, you got like a nice little box. I'd love to show you, but I don't think I can dance holding the camera in a feasible position while moving that. But also, if while we're down here you wanted to change up the position, the alignment of the handlebars, that's where you would do it right in there. We'll go ahead and close this. They have a nice little sticker right here to keep the frame of the handlebars, the kind of like this tubing looking nice. So that way when you clamp this down, you're not bashing into it all the time and scratching up the paint. Okay, so other things to talk about up in the front. You do have a nice set of wire loom to keep all the wires nice and together. Except for this brake cable here because it goes a totally different direction. But this is a nice touch to not have wires sprayed out everywhere across the front of the bike. Also in the front, you see you have the integrated front light right here that integrates into the main battery. This is a nice little LED light with a reflector that's integrated into the stock of the mount. Metal fender also up here with a little bit of a flap to kind of keep things out of the way. And of course you have the Kenda fat tires. These are 26 by 4, so that's a 26-inch diameter and a 4-inch width. So these are pretty aggressive. Also up front, you do have a quick release for the front wheel if you wanted to take that off entirely. Honestly, I don't know if I'd do that too much because the bike folds pretty small in the first place. But you also have the brakes up here, similar to the back. Actually, no, identical to the back. They are 160 millimeters on the rotor, as well as the mechanical disc brakes. Let's go over the cockpit before we jump on the bike and go for a ride. I kind of have it turned up a little bit too much, but that's okay. So these are the R-Tech brake levers that you have up here. These do have motor inhibitors in them, meaning that when you pull on the brake, this little wire sends a signal to cut off power to the motor, so you're never fighting against it. This is the Shimano tourney indexer that you have up here, push button for plus, and then you kind of push on this lever to kind of go down in a gear. And of course the little bell you can kind of flick to tell people that you're coming. And the display, let's go ahead and start that up. So this display is a rather simple display, kind of just tells you the basics of it, which truth be told I kind of like it that way. So you have up and down for your pedal assist level, and that goes up to 5, and of course down to 0, which is just regular bike mode. You have your speed, your variable display, which goes from your total distance to the voltage to a trip set, and that's pretty much it. You also have a timer up top alongside the battery indicator. Right now 4 bars, so ready to ride. And of course pressing and holding will turn it on or off. One last thing to talk about on the electric side is this little paddle right here. Press that down, well, assuming you're in assist. After you turn the bike on and get into assist, you turn on this little paddle by pushing it in, and then that will get your back wheel moving. So let's go ahead and do a little dance and I'll show you what that looks like. And there we go. So that's your throttle. This bike has throttle as well as a cadence-based pedal assist system. So you can kind of see a little bit in here. If you kind of take a peek back in here, you see that this is a 8-magnet sensor for pedal assist. That means that there's 8 of these little magnets going by this little counter. So it counts how many rotations the pedals are going, and then it divvies out a certain amount of pedal assist as a result. That certain amount, by the way, is controlled by how much you increase or decrease this level here. So you got it in level 1, it gives you a tiny bit of power for a tiny amount of time, and then more power for more time, more power more time, more power more time, etc., etc. So yeah, that is about it for the bike. Let's go ahead and jump on and I'll show you how it works. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention is that this bike does have some locking grips, which are pretty good. I've seen a lot of folding bikes that have some friction mounted grips, and they work pretty good. I mean, there's nothing terribly wrong with them. But on a folding bike, a lot of times people are concerned about how well the handlebars hold up, and these hold up just fine. I mean, they have some good locking levers on them. But the addition of those locking grips kind of give you a little bit of extra sense of security on them. It's a little tough to hold the camera and ride this bike because the handlebars are pretty narrow. And the narrow handlebars are, they make for really tight cornering and turning, but it's mainly done for the folding aspect to make this bike into a really small package. So I'm not going to talk too terribly much while riding this bike, but here we go. Okay guys, thanks for joining me on checking out the Biktrix LT. It's a pretty fun folding bike. I actually kind of like it. So you can check out this bike with the full specifications and the full write-up at ElectricBikeReview.com if you haven't already. As well, you can compare this with the rest of the Biktrix models that will be putting more reviews out in the near future, if they're not done by now. You can also compare this with other brands and models at ElectricBikeReview.com, as well as participate in the forums. If you have a question of your own, or if there's a model of bike that you want to see checked out, you can participate over there, and we hang out there from time to time. So yeah, thanks again for joining me. Ride safe.